an attempt to combine two unrelated clauses, to give you the power to impound vehicles when someone is not carrying their driving license. Kafui, is there some clarification that the DVLA can provide us with on that letter?
Okay, thank you very much. Good morning to your listeners and the resource person. Now, the letter that was issued, or the letter that is the subject matter of discussion, the intention is not to impound vehicles if a driver doesn't have a driver's license or have offended any of the traffic regulations. The law referred is clear and provides clarity on conditions under which a vehicle can be impounded and who can impound a vehicle. So if you refer to Regulation 158, it is clear in there that where a vehicle is found parked on a road, the police officer may impound that vehicle and keep as a safe place of others. The state. So basically, the intention is to, one, find out those who do not have driver's license and are driving on the road, those who have expired licenses and are driving on the road, and to get these people to comply with the law. But in the process, because we do work with the police, where there is enough evidence and where the act of a vehicle owner and a driver conflict or violates the law, then that is where the police may go impound that vehicle. But clearly, impounding the vehicle was not the intention for that communication.
So why did the Communication Code Regulation 158 at all, if the detail of the communication has to do with licensing, which is under Regulation 47, why was 158 even mentioned?
All right. So again, if you look at 158, in our enforcement exercises, we do also carry out inspections. And reference to 158, while our enforcement team is on the road, they will stop vehicles and inspect these vehicles. So under section 58 and 158, sorry, that is where, in the process of the inspection, the license may be requested for. So basically, even when the restriction is not to just 158, but in the exercise of ensuring that people comply, other regulations will be enforced. But I think that in this case, because the exercise was going to involve stopping vehicles for inspection, that was one of the reasons why that was cited.
Well, Mr. Semevo, I think you will forgive anybody for not understanding it the way you've explained. Because the very first sentence of the communication says, and I quote, "In accordance with Road Traffic Regulations 47 and 158 of LI 2180 of 2012, DVLA will begin impounding vehicles belonging to drivers who," and then there is a list. Okay, so you say the word impounding and then you follow with this list: driving without original license. So of course you are saying you are going to impound vehicles that are being driven without original license, do not have license at all. You will impound them.
So let me just repeat what I said again. That in our enforcement exercises, we do this together with the police. So where we are out there and it's necessary to impound a vehicle, then the police will come in and do and carry out that particular requirement of the law. It is not the DVLA. Even if the letter referred to the DVLA was going to do that. These exercises have been done always in collaboration with the police.
Okay.
And the National Road Safety and other stakeholders.
Okay. So thank you for that clarification. It is important. But even if we were to replace DVLA with police in this communication, we still have an issue. Because what you are saying is that working with the police will be impounding vehicles belonging to drivers who drive without license, without original license, who do not have license at all, who are driving with expired license, who are driving with photocopied license, who are driving with fake license, who are using wrong class of license. You will impound their vehicles, or the police will impound their vehicles. And that is what I'm asking you about. How can you impound?
So I actually understand what you are referring to.
Yes.
As the letter contains. But the author of the letter, that was not the intention. The law has been what is stated there is not exactly what was intended. So it is not that when you do not have a driver's license, your vehicle will be impounded. The law is very clear on what will lead to impoundment of your vehicle. So if you look at 158 and you refer to section regulation 1584, it's clear who and the condition for impounded. So definitely we wouldn't have gone out there while you inspect and you don't have a license to impound your vehicle. Let's also bear in mind that these exercises are things that we do on daily basis. But where we find out that there is a need to pay particular attention to a particular act or behavior, then we give that information to the public and say we are going to be paying attention to this particular act or behavior so that we can change it or get people to comply.
So to clarify, the DVLA working with the police will not be impounding vehicles for any of these 6 reasons, all to do with licensing. They will not be impounding
vehicles because any of these 6 regulations have been violated.
Right. So you see why I'm saying that perhaps 158 should not have been mentioned at all.
So yes, I do agree with you. I do agree with you. But again, this letter that you referred to actually was issued in the northern part of Ghana, right, by our regional manager at Tamale. Now, they may have had discussion with stakeholders and decided that these 6 reasons that they are going to go out are the things they should pay attention to. But in referring to the law and in quoting it, of course, if you read the letter, it is clear that the intention was not well communicated. But I think that the opportunity for us to correct that is one of this.
That's why I'm glad you're with us.
Yes, and we've also started the exercise, but yesterday when they started, they didn't impound vehicles.
Okay.
They rather paid attention to what was listed and got people to comply with those.
Okay. I'm glad you're with us so that you can provide us with more clarity and education. Please stay with us. I want to come into the studio. Gertrude, now that we have that clarity, there are those who yesterday, for example, were sending in lots of questions about, well, if what is the proper way to engage with the police if I am stopped and there is any question about my license. For example, I don't have it on me, or I have a photocopy, or any of the things that are listed here, or any other conceivable issue with a driver's license. I mean, walk us through, typically, if the law is being obeyed by everyone involved, how should this interaction go?
Right. Thank you, Kojo, and good morning once again. And let me say good morning to Senior Samson and then Kafui, who have also joined us. I would want to begin the discussion from this premise. each and every Ghanaian will be happy to have safe roads, to drive on safe roads, to ply on safe roads. So it's important that all the stakeholders, at least from my perspective, realize that we are not doing these things because we want to speak ill about a particular law enforcement agency or what have you. I feel safer when I'm driving and I see police officers on the roads. When I see DVLA officials on the roads, I feel much, much safer. But at the same time, in our bid to ensure safety of our roads, clearly the rights of every person must also be respected.
Yep.
And that is the reason why these conversations are absolutely important. And I'm very happy to have heard the comments of Kafui here on the line. I was a bit skeptical initially looking at the content of the letter because I took cognizance of the fact that this appeared to be an official communication to a particular person. But of course, at the end of the day, the idea was to carry out some enforcement on the roads by the officials mentioned.
Yeah.
But of course, for you and I, unfortunately, we can only gather the intention of the letter from the four corners of the document as we saw it. We do not have the benefit of the knowledge that Kafui had, that perhaps the letter was not written in a manner that communicated what they actually wanted to say. So having this information is clearly very, very important. Now, moving directly to your question, as an ordinary Ghanaian, plying the roads, driving, and you are stopped by a police officer. And in fact, when you look at the content of Regulation 2180, the act of stopping can be by a number of ways. It can actually be by hand, it can be by a siren, and so on and so forth.
Okay.
Now, let me begin by saying that for us as drivers or as road users, it is absolutely important that when the police or DVLA officials stop you, you stop. Many a times you find drivers who try to elude these officials. So even when there are clear signals that you are being stopped, some of us may want to still go ahead. But it's actually an offense for you not to stop when a police officer stops you. So that's the first thing. We all have to comply with that. Stop. It may be for any reason. Sometimes it could be for your own safety. There's something they may have noticed, which they just want to bring to your attention. Or your headlight, one of them is not functioning properly, and so on and so forth. So please, we have to stop. Now, after we have stopped, it is important for the police officer or official, DVLA official in question, to let you know the reason why you have been stopped. So, for example, you realize that he could, for example, say that you have taken an illegal U-turn, you have jumped the red light, and so on and so forth. And that is contrary to the law. So the police officer or whoever it is, the authorized official, needs to help you to understand why you have been stopped and why whatever action that you have taken in question is illegal, is contrary to the law. And this ought to be done in a language that you understand. So, for example, if the police officer is speaking English and you do not understand English, it is imperative for you to let him or her understand that officer, minti brofo, inu blofo, whichever word it is. And that officer has to find a means of ensuring that you get to understand whatever it is that he's bringing to your attention. Now, following from that, depending on the nature of the offense.
Forgive me, may I ask, just as
Right.
we're getting this education,
Right.
you are giving these things in the order in which they must happen.
That is so.
So that means that this explanation of why I have been stopped must come before they ask me for my license or for anything.
In my opinion, yes.
Okay.
Because once you have been stopped, I need to know why I have been stopped.
Okay.
Then following that, which is usually the protocol that you follow, you are going to be asked to produce your license.
Right.
And I think that is where the confusion has been from yesterday. What if for one reason or the other, I do not have the original copy of my license on me? I don't even have it at all. Or I have a defaced license or, and so on and so forth. Now, I think it's also important for all of us to realize that the law requires that we carry an original copy of our licenses with us. An original copy is stated right in the law. That's what the letter of the law states, that have an original copy of your license with you. Now, for numerous reasons. It could be that may not be the case. Yesterday, I listened into the show, and Senior Samson and Senior Martin gave a number of, scenarios where, for no bad intention, you do not have your license on you at the time that you have been stopped. It could be many. You may have different vehicles. For the ladies, you may have different purses. So you may have left the purse that contains the license with you, and you rather have a photocopy of it, and so on and so forth. Now, in the event that you do not have an original copy of your license with you, the law also gives the police officer the discretion to ask you to produce that license within 24 hours. Now, yes, many of us have quizzed. Oh, once it's a discretion, what if the police officer says that, look, it is my discretion, I'm deciding to exercise it against you, so for one reason or the other, I'm not going to permit you to do so. Ordinarily, this should not be the case. And why do I say this? I think it's important for all stakeholders to realize that traffic offenses, in my opinion, are in a bit of a special nature. Many of these so-called traffic offenses are merely infractions. Of course, there are more serious traffic offenses that have relatively dire consequences, but many of them are infractions that anybody at all can commit. Now, flowing from that, I think it's also important that our police officers, other officials, approach these exercises with as much decorum as possible. If you stop me and you are already shouting at me, you're already screaming at me, madam, why did you do this? Why did you do that? You approach me in such a confrontational manner. Then ordinarily, the response that you are likely to get will be the same nature. But let me say this. I believe that we have a lot of fine policewomen and policemen on our roads. Gentlemen and ladies who are just professional at their jobs. It's just unfortunate that once in a while we come across those who may want to, seem abusive and confrontational and what have you. So I was just making the point that I also think that's important that this exercise is carried out with as much decorum as possible. Asking for your license. In the event that you are unable to provide the license, ordinarily, this policeman or woman should be able to give you 24 hours within which to produce that license. Of course, now we are all clear on the fact that it doesn't mean that your vehicle has to be impounded. That would be clearly contrary to the law.
Gertrude, that point. Well, I mean, the law is very clear that original license.
Yes.
I've also seen policemen who have, sometimes they look at your soft copy, and say, oh, okay, you could go. Some even will look at the photocopy and say, oh, that's an indication that you have a license. And so it's the spirit not to ensure that at least you are a licensed driver. And so if you can do these things, then over to you, you move.
Winston, I absolutely agree with you. And I'm very happy with your use of the word that is an indication that you do have the license. Ordinarily, I believe we shouldn't even be having these conversations if technology is at work the way that it's supposed to be at work. If our officials have access, the collaboration between the DVLA and the police service, I think, has been very beneficial to all of us. But if that collaboration can further be strengthened to ensure that the police, for example, can easily have some mechanism or some system of checking on whether or not a particular driver has a license without that person actually having to physically present the license, just like it's done in other jurisdictions. So Winston, I absolutely agree with you that ordinarily a photocopy of it, a picture of it on your phone or on your tablet or what have you, should be prima facie, the face of it, a proof that you do have that license. So with that understanding, we believe that our uniformed officers, to a large extent, should be able to take a look at that and agree or, say that, okay, well, perhaps you do have the license, so I'm giving you 24 hours to provide the original to me, failing which consequences will follow. So yes, absolutely, you are right on that point.
Okay. If you don't mind, I'd like to bring Samson in. I know you're walking us through a process, so we will come back and continue. But I want to bring Samson in because, Samson, one of the things you pointed out yesterday was that these laws are really designed for our benefit. So in all instances, what seems to be the best way forward is to implement it in a way that benefits society. But there are instances where the police have reasonable suspicion that they are dealing with someone who they must, apply as much scrutiny to as possible. If at that point the only thing they have is the fact that you are not carrying a driver's license. Is it not within the power of the police to make full use of the letter of the law at this point?
Could you, I must apologize ahead that I will not be able to stay with you when it's 9 o'clock. I'm around the court and I have to get in.
Understood.
But I am very happy that the DVLA official has, made the admission that he did. You see, we are human and we make mistakes. What I want him to admit is that this was clearly a mistake. He's saying that was not the intention. But what I think he should be saying is that this was a mistake. I think he began very candidly in the manner he approached it, and he ought to be applauded for that. Too often we are too defensive, and we feel it's a crime to say I made a mistake. It's not a crime to say you made a mistake. What is wrong is to rather tell a lie and try to rationalize with a lie when the truth is told you. So if you looked at the section 158, you see the first two people that the law mentions is an examiner, an authorized vehicle inspector. These are not the people who are standing by the roadside and checking your license. You don't need those class of people to be stopping you, wasting their precious time and skills, to be checking your license. Then I need to also clarify that let's avoid suggesting, even remotely, that it is the discretion of the officer who stops you to give you 24 hours within which to produce your license when it is required. It is no discretion. Please read section 747(4) again. Read it. If you read it, you will see, and let me help you out. Regulation 47, sub-regulation 4, where a person driving a motor vehicle is required to produce a license, a certificate, or a document relevant to driving the motor vehicle. That person shall, our interpretation law says, access, this is mandatory, shall produce it immediately or within 24 hours of being required to produce the license, certificate, or document. So if you produce it immediately or you are afforded 24 hours within which to produce it. So it is not the discretion of the officer. My default is that human beings are naturally good. That's my default. So when I approach you, I need you to give me reason to think otherwise and begin to exercise a certain level of caution. Well, the police normally, I think the training generally, the security officers, the training generally has been to approach with a certain enthusiasm, for a lack of a better word, a certain zeal, and often that's what results in what we see. I'm not saying there are not bad people around town. There are. And in fact, they are the main reason we need the rules, we need the laws, so that they will, like my sister just said, obeying the police officer or whoever is directing traffic shouldn't be put in a law. But it's in law. It's in the act itself, not the regulation we are reading. Not obeying them being an offense. It's in the act itself. What is it? Who are we? Are we robots? Do we need all of that direction? We don't, because we are supposed to exercise reasonable wisdom, a modicum of wisdom in the way we do things. when there is traffic in a place where there is no police officer or someone to direct the traffic, could you see how chaotic it becomes for the motoring public? It becomes so chaotic that nothing really gets done. We can't exercise. And if you try to be a little reasonable, check the number of people who will be behind you honking and insulting you for being too patient and wanting to allow space so that one person can move. Because if somebody doesn't move, we all, don't get to move somehow. Then too many of us don't want to do that. That's the thing about our society, which needs to change. But it ought to be emphasized. I'm glad that from what the DVLA officer has said this morning, we practically don't have an argument anymore. We don't have an argument anymore. My only problem is, how is he going to, or the office, going to get to all the Ghanaians who have become aware since this letter was issued that this is what is going to happen, and for the officers who are going to enforce it. There are those of them. You and I are reading the law now. Go check. They may never have read this law. Okay, and even if they pick it, what the directive is in the letter is what they will go by. They won't read to see for themselves what it is that they are rather supposed to enforce. So please, it is not a matter of discretion. It is just that the state has failed to a large extent, and so sometimes their default is that it says we should give you to produce it immediately or within 24 hours. But I can't guarantee your identity. You are showing me an identity card. You are giving me your address. I can't also trust you. And you see, generally, there's a problem of trust from the top to bottom. We can't trust each other. So they can't also trust you. In any case, the addressing system is very bad. So they can't guarantee that if they are looking for you, they'll find you at the address that you gave.
Sure.
So the default position is that, the best way to ensure that you return to show me your license is to detain, impound your vehicle. But they don't have the power to impound the vehicle under that circumstance. So we ought to tell them that you don't have the power to impound the vehicle. That is important. They can actually direct you if you came into Accra and, there's an office somewhere closer to where you live. Because once again, it's a system that just don't work. The simple thing is to tell you, the nearest police station to your house is Adakulu, police station number B. So please, I am reporting you to that office there. This is your car number. They are expecting that you report there within 24 hours to show your license. Again, technology has overtaken some of these laws. When you say original, the fact that I have a scanned copy of it, does it remove the originality of it? It doesn't. The fact that I'm holding a photocopy, yes, you can question that. But like you said, prima facie, that should be sufficient. But if I have a scanned copy of it, I have taken a photograph of it, does it remove the originality, really?
Now that you've made that point, Samson, I mean, there's a question here.
So we can all help. The law says, don't park on the verges of the road. Don't park on pathways and so on. When you do that, then your vehicles should be impounded.
Okay, but I mean, Samson, now that you make the point about, original and everything, there's a question someone asked yesterday that says, assuming the license hasn't been renewed after the first 2 years, evidenced by the sticker on the rear of the card, does it mean my ability to drive is impaired?
I'd like to hear what the DVLA has
exactly.
to say.
But just
when you give, let's say, for example, the authorization that you have to operate an electronic media, sometimes there's money considerations involved. The DVLA needs to make money to take care of itself and to be able to do the work that it has to do. So part of the incentive, so that we don't always fall on central government, is to put in some of these things, requiring you within certain intervals to return and do the renewal and pay a fee. Then they will use the fee for the administrative purposes and to make sure that they are functioning. Because without that, they will not be able to function. But I think there may be a greater good in the requirement, because anything could happen to you between the time when you take the license and when you are supposed to renew it. So you go for the renewal, and then you go through the little things that you are supposed to do to further show that yes, I still can drive and drive competently and not recklessly and be a danger to the other road user. You get that? So
sure.
That is a requirement. It doesn't take away the fact that you have a license which expires at a certain date. Your license expires on a particular date. So when you see you get the license and it will say maybe expires 2026. But between the time, if you got it in 2020, it will say it expires in 2026. Then in between the time, 2 times, you go to renew it. It's supposed to be part of the reasons to ensure that you are doing things right. You are so competent to do what you have to do. But it doesn't mean your license has expired, because the expiration date is there. In the same way, if you take, like I said, authorization license for operating a media house, you are supposed to pay some annual, monies, fees. If you don't pay them, you have breached the law, and there are sanctions. Okay, the sanctions are often, monetary penalties, administrative fines. Then you pay them. It doesn't mean your license has expired. Clearly, on the face of the document itself, your license has not expired, but you have not complied with the law. And non-compliance with the law attracts the sanctions that has been enumerated both in the Act itself and in the regulations that
right.
I find that you guys appear to have read so much over the period. And let's encourage everybody. You just go to Google and just look for the Road Traffic Regulations 2012. It will pop up.
Yeah.
Read the relevant portions for yourself. The laws have been made such that you don't really need a lawyer to explain them. They have been made in such a language that I doubt that, we have to make this mischief about needing a lawyer to read and interpret anything to you. I agree that because a lawyer is practicing and using the law, they are better placed. And because a lawyer is trained also in this direction, they are better placed. I don't go to law school, and nobody teaches me in the law school about Road Traffic Act. So, yes, I think what you have said this morning is very good, but they should extend it elsewhere,
right?
And help to get people to understand. The police commanders, they should make their people appreciate that these things, that's what they are.
Yeah.
Deal with the people humanely. Deal with them, showing them that you love them, unless they give you reason to act otherwise.
Yeah.
I think that's what I'll say.
All right, Samson, I'm conscious of the time. I know your time is up, actually, 9 o'clock.
Yes.
You have to run. I want to thank you for your time with us.
Thank you very much.
Indeed.
You're welcome.
And that's Samson Lardy Anyenini. He's a private legal practitioner, prominent Ghanaian lawyer. Hates being called that. All right, now, let's get back to our conversation. Kafui Semevo is the Director of Driver Training, Testing and Licensing at the DVLA. Kafui, I want to come to you because it's very important that we hear from you on 2 issues. The first one is the question Winston posed to Samson about the renewals,
and validation,
the validations that have to be done every 2 years, and whether or not, since my driver's license has not expired, whether the fact that I haven't done the validation means that somehow my driving ability is impaired. Can you give us some clarity on that process?
Yeah, all right, thank you very much. So the grant of the license is based on the fact that we have assessed your competence, knowledge, and skills. And the license then permits you to use the public roads. However, it's a legal requirement that every 2 years, just like you said, you come to validate the driver's license. When the time is due for validation, it does not mean that your skills, your knowledge of driving, and then your competence is taken away. I mean, you've lost them. But what we are looking at, it goes beyond even the financial consideration, as Samson referred to. We then have the opportunity to find out whether your medical conditions are still the same as they were when we granted the license. So when you come, there are some requirements you have to meet. One of them is, for instance, the eye test that you undergo. Every 2 years you do that. If there is any reason when you turn up for us to require you to undergo further medical examination, we will do that. If there is any reason for us to say you need to repeat a test of competence, that can be done. But the essence actually is not that because you are going to validate your skill of driving, you've lost it. No. So there's a clear distinction between your skills that you've acquired and the permission to use the road.
Okay.
All right. Well, I guess that clarifies that. Thank you for that, Kafui. Now, this is the second thing I wanted to hear you on. This letter has now made the rounds across the country, and we're glad we have you on our show to clarify, that, look, in fact, the communication in the letter was not what was accurately intended. But there are many people who have not heard you. What does the DVLA intend to do to correct the wrong impression created by this letter?
So, two things. Already we've engaged our officers across the country to clarify to them what they should do in terms of actions they should take in related to this letter. The next thing is that the authority also issue, I'm sure by close of day will issue a statement that will be available on all the platforms available to us to inform the public of the error in the letter and also inform them of what is required of them and how we intend to carry out this exercise.
Okay, that's helpful, Kafui. I would love for you to keep listening, even though we will be using the phone lines to hear from our callers. I want you to please keep listening if you've got something to write down some of the questions that come up, because we will reconnect with you on the other side of the phone calls for some answers to the questions raised by our callers, okay? Thank you so much for your patience. Now, Gertrude, before we open the phone lines, we're going to finish that, if you like, checklist of things that must happen when you are stopped by the authorities. But before that, you wanted to make a point about something Samson said.
That is so. And you recall that Samson had said that in his opinion, the option to produce your license within 24 hours is not a discretionary one. It's not a discretion that the police holds. And he quoted Regulation 47, Sub-Regulation 4 of LI 2180 to support that. Now, the view or the opinion, the prevalent opinion, has been that the police have that discretion. And the reason or what informs this opinion is the fact that when you read Sub-Regulation 3 of Regulation 47 alone, it says that the police officer in uniform, and I'm paraphrasing, may request a person to produce within 24 hours your license, either to him or to a designated police station, as he may direct. So if you read Sub-Regulation 3 alone, with the use of the word may, which ordinarily connotes a permissive power. So that is where we say that the police officer has that discretion. But in total agreement with Samson, if you read the 4, sub-regulation 4 of the same regulation 47, it is clear that where a person who is driving the motor vehicle is required to produce your license, not only a license or any other certificate or document relating to the driving of that vehicle, that person shall produce it immediately, either immediately or within 24 hours of being required to produce that document.
Right.
So you realize that the 4 is actually very specific, that there are 2 options. Either you produce it immediately or you have within 24 hours within which to produce it. When you read the 3 as a standalone, you get the impression that the police officer has that discretion. Now, in my opinion, if you read the 3 and 4 combined, and I will agree with Samson on this point, you cannot continue to maintain that is a full discretion given to the police, because the law in 4 is clear that either you produce it immediately or you produce it within 24 hours. So that is just to add up to Samson's point on that. So it's important, if I may just chip this in, Kojo, and this is a plea to our law enforcement officers. It is very important that we read the law in context. If it requires that we read the law together with other provisions, either of the Act or even of the same regulations, please let us do so. And even more importantly, we need to realize that this, as an act of parliament and a subsidiary legislation, is subservient to the overriding provisions of the supreme law of the land, which is the Constitution. So we'd want to plead with the commanders or those who are in charge of the training, and I know this has already been done, but if the officers can be reminded almost every time that, look, this thing requires that we look at the law as a totality, as a whole. So this practice of picking and choosing to say that, hey, regulation this says that, hey, section this says that, just to cower someone into submission, it should be a thing of the past.
Right. A very important point. And by the way, you would have noticed that the police is not part of this conversation. We tried. We reached out to them, but they have not participated in our conversation. All right, so we'll be opening the phone lines in just a couple of minutes, but I need you to very quickly, bullet points, walk us through. So this is how far we got. Number 1, when they stop you, you must stop. It's an offense not to stop. Number 2, they must tell you the reason why they stopped you in a language that you understand.
Right.
Number 3,
now they have their own protocols that they follow, including the production of the requesting for you to produce your license. Now, I even view that as a protocol that they tend to follow. Ordinarily, they want to ensure that you have the requisite, documentation to be driving whatever vehicle you are driving. So they may ask for your license, your roadworthy certificate, your insurance certificate, and so on and so forth. Now, of course, if you are the kind of driver who doesn't have the license in the first place, mind you, that may not have been the reason why you were stopped. You may have been stopped for a totally different reason. Maybe you have taken a wrong U-turn, you have jumped the red lights, you were driving recklessly, and so on and so forth. But as part of their own protocols, they want to ensure that you have the relevant documentation first. So with that out of the way, you are now going to be told why you have been stopped and why he's going to arrest you. Now, once that happens, they are going to ask you to either move to a designated police station, normally the one nearest to you. And I think this is a good point to also mention. The practice where the policeman will just stop you, a woman will just stop you, and is already opening your door to want to sit in your vehicle. That, again, I think Samson mentioned that yesterday, is unlawful. The police has no power to insist on sitting in your vehicle with you to take you somewhere without your permission. That is a clear act of trespass. If you do not consent to them sitting in your vehicle, they cannot force their way into it. And once again, that is something that has become so prevalent. Sometimes without even telling you the reason why you are being stopped, they are already sitting in your vehicle. That is something we should avoid. So they would require you to move to a particular police station, and then once you have been made aware of the reason why you were stopped, what you are going to be charged with, they'll then proceed and book you for court. Now, going to court, yes.
May I ask, what if the reason why they stopped you is something that falls under Regulation 158, and therefore they impound your vehicle? do they then still need your permission before they enter the vehicle?
Now, let us go back to 158 and be specific on the reasons why your vehicle may be impounded. Kwejo, you have just referred to 158. 158 says that when your vehicle is parked, now let's go back to 158 and if you get there first, please read 158.
Okay. A race to reach regulation 158.
I tell you, we need to be clear on exactly what the law says, especially on this issue, because 158 is actually quite expansive. It doesn't just provide for good. So this is 158.
Oh, you got there.
Right. Power to inspect, impound, and prohibit the use of motor vehicle. It's quite a wide provision. Now, the police or any other, licensed, the licensing authority can actually inspect your vehicle for purposes of ensuring that you are complying with the provisions of the law, isn't it?
Yes.
However, when you look at sub-regulation 5 of 158, and at this point I think it's important that I read it, it provides that where a motor vehicle or trailer is found parked on a road, a police officer may impound the motor vehicle or trailer or cause it to be taken to a police station or place of safety and be detained there until the owner of the motor vehicle or trailer and the person driving the motor vehicle or responsible for the trailer can be identified and dealt with as provided for under these regulations.
Right.
So this question of the ability of them to impound the vehicle, when you look at the provision I've just read, it presupposes that the vehicle has been wrongly parked and the driver is not even present in it. Then, of course, for road safety issues, the police may, the word there again is may, decide to impound the vehicle until the driver can be identified. Now, there are other provisions within the law, and I'm sure Kafui can correct me if I'm wrong, whereby if your vehicle breaks down in the middle of, of the road or of nowhere, you actually have a duty to inform the police that my vehicle has broken down here or there, and I'm not able to move it for purposes of, for reasons of this or that. So let us be clear that 158 takes into consideration the situation where the driver is not even in the vehicle.
So to simplify the matter, if you have been stopped by the police, the issue, under no circumstances can the police officer sit in your car unless you have given them the permission.
That is so.
Okay.
The
good.
police officer can find his way and will find his way to wherever he wants you to go.
Okay. So let's conclude this list quickly and open the phone.
Yeah,
lines.
so the conclusion of the list would be that once you are taken to the police station in question, you are processed. They have other protocols that they follow over there. You are processed before court. You are given a date on which you should appear before the motor courts to have your case, your matter determined. Because mind you, at this point, you have not yet been convicted for whatever charge that the police is going to prefer against you. These are, allegations that they'll have to prove in court, before a court of competent jurisdiction, before a magistrate, to decide on whether or not you have actually committed the offense that they have charged you with.
Okay. So to wrap up, when they stop you, stop. They must tell you why they stopped you in a language you understand. Then their own police protocols for checking of documentation will kick in, following which, if there's an intention to arrest you, they must inform you of it and follow the protocol of arrest.
That is so.
Now, they cannot sit in your vehicle unless you consent to them doing
That is so.
And finally, once they've determined what traffic offense they believe you've committed, they must process you for court where the matter will be deliberated upon.
Exactly so.
Gertrude, that is so helpful. Listen, call us now. 0302 216 541 055 1111 997. We want to hear your questions. We want to attempt to deal with them. Kafui and Gertrude will certainly work through them and help us answer them all. But Gertrude, let me I was going to ask mine first, but Benjamin is on the line from Adenta. We don't want to keep him waiting. Benjamin, thanks for calling. How are you?
I'm good, and how are you?
Not bad at all, Ben.
Okay, good. It's a very interesting discussion this morning. I mean, there are so many issues. The police, they basically will just want to arrest you because of what they can take from you. And this is a fact because police IGPs have mentioned that even police officers don't have any right to take your license. So I'm just wondering, the license was issued by DVLA. So DVLA is the only body that can inspected. So what kind of laws do we have in this country? I can't, just as today, without you pasting your insurance sticker on your vehicle, the police can simply use a short code by just dialing your vehicle number to identify whether indeed your vehicle is properly insured or not. So why is the situation today where, according to our Vice President, digitalization has taken over and a lot of investment has gone into this DVLA thing, though the group are still there, but then why can't you just produce a code? Because the start is today, you may forget your license. So as we move on, as a democracy, even Ghana card, people are getting it, people Ghana card is lost, so we produce a number. So why can't you just have a number, you give to the police uses whatever systems that are built in place, and they only check and verify that indeed this is you. They only look at the picture, they see it is you. You can even get your thumbprint, to identify that this is you. Why are we always backward in thinking?
Thank you for that, Benjamin. And we've noted your question. We will get both Kafui and our guest in the studio to answer that. Kofi is in East Legon. Hi, Kofi.
Hi, good morning.
Good morning to you.
Some good education this morning, but I tend to ask myself if it will make any difference. I'm learning a lot this morning, but I still feel it's not going to make any difference because these people who are supposed to enforce the law, they stop you stop, and when you are trying to be reasonable to them, they get offended. Asking you, are you the one to tell them how to do their job? So really, if you're educating me this morning of what should be done, what difference is it going to make if the one who is supposed to be reasonable with me to think that me asking for the right thing to be done, it's me asking him or her how to do it. Madam said something about there are a lot of politics who are doing the right things and once in a while you meet the bad one. No, it's the reverse way that. It's once in a while you meet the good ones. It's once in a while you meet the good. Look, I was once arrested at the Accra MTCU. I asked an officer, he kindly, nicely, officer, please, what is my offense? The next thing that came from the officer's mouth, you are stupid for asking me that question. I'm telling you. And what is that? The name is still in my head. I'm missing it right now. That's what he told me. You are stupid for asking me this question.
Wow. Well, Kofi, your question is noted. We'll get to it. Please, if I may appeal to all of us, we want to take as many questions as possible. So if you can keep your submission to about 30 seconds, get your question in there so that we can note it and get you some answers. Jude is calling from University of Ghana. Hi, Jude. Good morning.
Yeah, hello, sir. Good morning.
Thanks for calling.
Yeah. Your resource person, the lawyer, said something. She was saying that when you are stopped, the police should actually speak to you in a language you understand.
Yeah.
While you are driving a car, you get your license. I think you go through the process. The examination is in English. So if you don't understand English at all, wouldn't it raise a suspicion that, so how did you acquire a license? Because you wrote the exams in English. So if you don't understand English, then how come you acquired a license? I don't know if she can explain or the man from DVLA can explain that. Because now a lot of people acquire licenses through the other way. Like some months back, there was this expose on Joy FM about how people go through some means of getting licenses without going through the due process. Yes. So shouldn't that raise any suspicion in the first place? Oh, I don't understand English.
I get your question, Jude. Thank you. Thank you very much. I'll get you an answer in a moment. Emmanuel is in Tema. Hi, Emmanuel. Good morning.
Good morning, Kojo.
Thanks for calling us.
Kojo, please, I want to keep it snappy. I want to know the class of officers who can demand for our license.
Say that again.
I want to know the class of officers who can demand for our license. I learned you say Inspector and Abbas.
Okay. Thank you, Emmanuel. And very, very good question there. I like Jude's question as well. Is it not a red flag if somebody cannot is driving but cannot speak English? Nana is in Medina. Hi, Nana. Good morning.
Please, I have a simple question. I want to ask the DVLA man, why does it keep long for a especially those of us who want to acquire our licenses within the six months rate. Why does it extend to a year and sometimes going to close to 2 years when you want to follow the right system? Why does it take so long? Because I believe that they are a contributing factor for people who want to cut corners. I did mine within the 6 months rate, and it took me close to 2 years. Meanwhile, within this same rate, people that are closer to me who did the premium, which is the 3 months, even got their license before the 3 months. So wait, so I think they're encouraging this whole backdoor thing. So I want to ask you, why does they have to extend the 6 months? Please.
Thank you. Okay, that was Nana's question from Medina. All right, let's see if we can get some answers. Maybe we'll have to start with you, Gertrude, in the studio. So Benjamin wants to know whether the DVLA is actually the only body that can that can ask you for your license. Okay, he also wants to know, why can't we just use technology to do all of these document verifications?
Yes, thank you, Kojo. Now, Benjamin has to note that all these things we are saying are actually provided for by law, the Road Traffic Act itself and the accompanying regulations. Now, it is not only, when you look at Regulation 47, for example, on production of your driver's license, which is what has taken a major part of our discussion this morning and yesterday, you realize that the law actually gives the police the right to inspect your license. Yes, it is the DVLA that issued the license to you as a relevant licensing authority, but the police is given the power by law to inspect your license. On the issue of digitalization, I mean, we cannot say it enough. We've had this discussion countless times. We've seen how this works in other jurisdictions, how easy and smooth this can be if we want us to. And I think it may be better to have Kafui share his thoughts with us on this, because I'm pretty sure that some steps are already being taken in that regard to make some of these things much more easier to access. Yes.
He's on the line. Let's get him to weigh in on this. Kafui, how far away are we from having a smooth technological framework for checking all of these documentations when drivers are stopped?
Thank you. We have also realized that, of course, technology has outlived the law. And at this point, what we are doing is that we've made some proposals for amendment so that the electronic copies of the license could be made available for enforcement purposes.
Right.
And that will mean that we will have to provide means of verifying to the police officers and to our own officers. And even the holders of the license granted some access to be able to have a copy of the license in other forms. So once the amendment goes through, this will be done.
Right. That's good news. Okay, Kofi had a question. He said, what difference will it make, if all this education you've given, sinks down for everyone, but the police refuses to be reasonable? And in his view, he says good police officers are the exception. Your thoughts, Gertrude?
I mean, at this point, it's very understandable for some of us to be frustrated at this entire process. It is not a very nice thing or a comfortable thing at all to be apprehended by a policeman who is so confrontational, who is abusive, in the case that one of our callers actually mentioned. Now, I do believe that, yes, it will make a difference. Already, we are seeing results of same. As at yesterday, there was a lot of fear and panic in the country as a result of this communication that came out. But just look at what Joy has managed to do between yesterday and today, to the extent that the DVLA has come out clearly to say that no, that was not the intention of the communication. So vehicles are not going to be impounded for, the inability of a driver to produce a license. So we are already getting results.
Yeah.
The only thing is that we need to be able to sustain the discussions. It's always the sustenance that matters, whether we are able to continue the way we have started and ensure. I'm very sad that unfortunately our police could not join us this morning, or officials from the MTCD could not join us. It would have been very, very wonderful to hear their views. But yes, I strongly believe that with the advocacy that is being done by stations like Joy and other stakeholders, yes, it will make a difference. So let us not give up just yet.
Okay. This is for you, Kafui. Jude is raising this question. He says, look, the law says the police must tell you why they stopped you in a language you understand. So is it not a red flag if you stop a driver and he says he doesn't understand English? Well, maybe you can clarify for us. Is there any way that a person who doesn't understand English can pass a driving test in Ghana and get a license?
All right. So if you look at our test regime as of today, the theory test is conducted in English. Now, training a driver can be done in any language the driver understands, because it's a skill you are acquired. And that is the reason we have said that restricting the test to English alone doesn't help. So we just got the approval. We are preparing to introduce 6 Ghanaian languages: Ga, Ewechi, Dagbani, Hausa, and Zima, to translate the test into those languages.
Right.
That means that for those who today, because the test is conducted in English, may not be able to access our test, will now have the opportunity to access the test.
Okay.
The fact that when a police officer stops you, the officer has to communicate to you in the language you understand. In most cases, police officers on duty do not stand alone at duty points. They have other colleagues. So the chance of one of them being able to communicate in a language the driver understands is very high. And therefore, the English is not a red flag in this, but restricting our processes or requirement to English is not the best.
I get that, and I'm glad you're trying to do something about it. But the fact remains that up until today, any person who currently has a driving license did a test in English. That's the assumption, that they did a test in English. So
before the test was introduced, people had already acquired licenses. And these people, some of them, when we started the theory test, at the time it was paper-based.
Right.
At that time, we also had people who did interpretation for drivers.
Okay.
So it is possible.
It is possible for a person to get a license even if they don't speak English. Okay, thank you for that, Kafui. Emmanuel wants to know which class of officer can demand a driver's license.
Right. Kojo, before that, can we quickly, talk about this issue of abuse, verbal abuse? I just want to say something quickly.
Yes,
one of the callers mentioned that he has been abused by a police officer before. Please,
yes.
That is not acceptable. It is highly unethical. It is very contrary to the professional standards that police officers are supposed to uphold. If you find yourself in a situation like that, you can, in my opinion, either report to a superior of that police officer, or even walk into the Police Professional Standards Bureau, PIPS, and make a complaint against that. It is very contrary to your rights as a person and your dignity to be abused verbally by a police officer.
Thank you.
Now, on the question of the rank of a policeman who can inspect your license, let us be clear on this. When you look at the law, any police officer at all can inspect the license. But again, looking at Regulation 47, it is a police officer in uniform who is not below the rank of an inspector who can actually retain the license where necessary. But any police officer at all can ask to inspect your license. But when it comes to having to retain the license, it has to be a police officer who is not below the rank of an inspector.
And they must be in uniform.
That is so.
Okay. All right, final question, and this one is for the DVLA. Why do licenses take so long? When they apply for the 6-month one, it can sometimes take a year.
Okay, so there are some applications that have delayed. However, there are also peculiar issues with some applications that we do investigate, and if it's a peculiar issue, we need to go into it and then address it. But those that have delayed, there are measures in here, and then we are trying to clear those backlogs. We also have noticed that some that have even been printed have still at our various offices uncollected. And to get these licenses to the owners, we are having a collaboration with Ghana Post to deliver the licenses to those who should own those licenses.
Right.
We, however, apologize for the delay, but we also assure the public that we are doing all possible to clear the backlog.
Kafui, I want to thank you so much for your time with us. You've really helped clarify lots of issues. Gertrude Amorkor, oh, what a pleasure it's been to have you on the show. Kafui, of course, is the Director of Driver Training, Testing and Licensing at DVLA, and Gertrude is a private legal practitioner and lecturer at UPSA Law School. God bless you both, and let's continue these conversations in the coming weeks.